shortcomings compared to Roxy and Sylphie. Rude reassures her that he loves her no matter what happens. Rude then gives a marriage proposal to Eris, and she accepts it. Then back at home during dinner, he announces that Eris will be his wife. Roxy and Sylphie accept Eris into their family, but Aisha and Noor aren't happy with Rude for taking on a third wife, but ultimately they accept Eris as well. Jacelyn announces that now she has left Eris and Rudeus' care, and her mission is done. She plans to go back to the Asura Empire to enact revenge on those who killed Saros Greyret, who was her former master, and Eris' grandfather. Rude warns Jacelyn that Water God and North Emperor are hired by Asura Empire, and Jacelyn acknowledges that she would not be able to defeat them alone. Rude suggests that Jacelyn consider allying herself with Princess Ariel, and she agrees to speak with Ariel. After dinner, Rude goes back to his bedroom and finds Eris inside. Eris is very sexually assertive, and they have sex for the second time. Then as he wakes up the next morning, he receives a letter from Orsted. In Orsted's letter, he asks Rude to meet him in a hut outside Sharia city suburb, and he tells him to come alone. Rude is nervous as he wants to make a good first impression on his new boss, so Rude meets Orsted in the hut, and it turns out that unbeknownst to him, Eris has also followed Rudeus there. Eris continues to distrust Orsted, and warns him not to harm Rudeus. Orsted states that he will fulfill his promise to protect Rudeus' family right now. They plan to summon a guardian magical beast that possesses a strong fate to protect Rudeus' family. Orsted reasons that this will provide adequate protection, as Hitagami cannot manipulate the fate of inhuman beings, and cannot manipulate a large number of people at once. However, Orsted warns that since they cannot predict or monitor Hitagami's actions, they should also frequently check in on his family. Orsted sees that Rude has several questions for him and gives him permission to ask whatever he wants to know, so Rude asks to know about Orsted himself. They first review Orsted's curse, which is that Orsted is feared and distrusted by all living creatures with certain exceptions such as Nanahoshi and Rude. Rude reveals that this may be because he is from a different world just like Nanahoshi. Other exceptions to this curse are those from the ancient dragon tribe. Next, Rude learns that Orsted's ability to be invisible from Hitagami's view is actually not a curse. It is actually a technique developed by the first-generation dragon god for fighting Hitagami, which allows him to see fate and deviate from the path predestined by fate. However, the downside of this technique is that it causes your magic regeneration to be 1,000 times slower. Therefore, Orsted cannot freely use magic and cannot fight to his full ability. He reveals that he had actually used up a considerable amount of magic power in his fight against Rude, and so he cannot fight seriously for a while. Therefore, Orsted is relying on Rude to act on his behalf. Rude then asks why Orsted is fighting Hitagami. Orsted reveals that his father, the first-generation dragon god, was killed by Hitagami. Since then, the ancient dragon tribe's greatest wish and the sole reason for the existence of subsequent dragon gods is to defeat Hitagami. Orsted reveals that he is from the 100th generation of dragon god, and that he was sent from the past to the present by his father, using a method of reincarnation. Orsted also reveals that he has been alive for the past 2,000 years. Rude thinks to himself that Orsted's grudge against Hitagami is too strong to be solely fueled by revenge for his father. He asks Orsted to clarify the reason for his grudge, but Orsted gives a vague answer. Nevertheless, Rude decides to trust Orsted. Rude then asks about the Laplace factor, and he reviews what he knows about Laplace. He says that Laplace was responsible for a war 400 years ago. He had a lot of magic power, but was unable to use battle aura. He was ultimately sealed by Perugulus and 2 others, but will soon revive in the future, and he was the one who caused the downfall of the super tribe. Orsted reveals that Laplace's method of reviving is the same as the method of reincarnation used by the dragon tribe. Laplace was previously a demon dragon king, who was one of the 5 first-generation dragon generals, but once Laplace fought against the first-generation dragon god, and later he realized that Hitagami had manipulated him, so he became the dragon god subordinate once again. While fighting Hitagami, the first-generation dragon god died, while Laplace survived. He escaped the collapsing dragon world and drifted to this world. He became the second-generation dragon god, and his goal was to defeat Hitagami. Laplace started the human-demon race war and fought the fighting god, who was Hitagami's apostle. As a result of the battle, Laplace has lost his memory, and his soul was split into 2 halves, the demon god and the technique god. Demon god Laplace lost the power of dragons, but retained his magic knowledge and magic power. He also hated the human race, and so rallied the demon race to exterminate humans. The other half, known as the technique god Laplace, lost the power of magic, but retained his knowledge of techniques. He created the 7 Great Powers rankings, and his goal was to overthrow Hidegami. Orsted also explains that the first-generation dragon god invented the method of reincarnation, where you send one soul into the future by taking over another being's body and ultimately reviving. However, to reduce the chance of the other being's body rejecting one soul, the dragon god implanted his factor into multiple people. This factor is passed on to their descendants and modifies their bodies slightly. Orsted explains that many dragon tribe members have used this method of reincarnation, including Perugius, prior to being sealed by Perugius. Demon god Laplace distributed his factor and sent his soul into the future for the purpose of reincarnating himself. And currently, people with Laplace's characteristics and possessing the Laplace factor are beginning to appear. Characteristics such as an aptitude towards magic, having a large amount of magic power, green hair, and having demon eyes at birth are signs of having Laplace factor. Sylphie and Ruddy are examples of such people, but Orsted reassures Ruddy that he and Sylphie are not Laplace himself. Orsted further reassures Ruddy that while Ruddy did reincarnate, he likely reincarnated in the body of a baby who is destined to be stillborn, and therefore did not displace someone else's life. Ruddy next asks Orsted about the monoculamity. However, Orsted is unable to give any further information. Ruddy then shares with Orsted the diary from his future self. He then clarifies the terms of his working relationship under Orsted, and Orsted reassures Ruddy that he will receive breaks to see his family. Next, Ruddy asks about receiving the money to support his family, to which Orsted gives him a valuable dagger and a bag of gems, which can be sold for considerable sums of money. Orsted says he will read the future diary, and they agree to meet again the next day. The next day, Ruddy goes back to the hut to meet Orsted. He comes alone this time, but outside the hut he sees Zenova lying face down, but he was still alive. Orsted explains that the previous night Zenova went to collect the broken magic armor and unexpectedly encountered Orsted. Due to Orsted's curse, Zenova decided to fight him. Fortunately, instead of fighting Zenova, Orsted used hypnosis magic to put Zenova to sleep for a few hours. So Orsted and Ruddy then resume their main discussions. Orsted has finished reading the future Ruddy's diary, but before discussing that further, he asks Ruddy to recount all his conversations with Hidegami. So Ruddy describes each of his encounters and conversations with Hidegami in detail, including the advice given and its consequences. After hearing this, Orsted suggests that Hidegami seems to have manipulated Ruddy to change history, and that given that Ruddy has strong fate, history was originally not supposed to change. However, Orsted still doesn't understand why Hidegami changed history to this degree. Orsted thinks that he will try to once again change history to one that is favorable to him. Ruddy wonders if they can collect the hidden treasures and reach Hidegami, but Orsted replies that the last treasure is in Laplace's possession, who will revive in about 80 years. Orsted believes that Hidegami has the ability to be trusted by all living beings, and so he has difficulty dealing with irregularities such as Ruddy. Orsted states that their first mission is to readjust history so that Ariel will become Asura Kingdom's queen. In the original timeline, Ariel should have become queen and was in fact protected by a considerably powerful fate. Originally, there were 3 key people to her rise in power. They were guardian magician Derek Redbat, Eris Greyrat, and Tristina Purple Horse. Derek was a shrewd man, and ambitious, and was originally Ariel's guardian magician. He would have also persuaded Perugius to assist Ariel. He would have remained as Ariel's advisor, and eventually become prime minister. Eris would have married to Luke, and together they would have protected Ariel from assassins. Tristina was a child from Asura's upper aristocrat Purple Horse family, but she was abducted when she was 8 years old, and became a sex slave to senior minister Darius Ganimus. Ariel helped Tristina before she could be disposed of in secret. As a result, Darius Ganimus would have lost his position, and the first Prince Gravel would have lost his influence. So Orsted and Ruddy then planned to find Tristina to force the senior minister's downfall. If they fail, they planned for Ruddy to kill Darius. Orsted reveals that in January, the information that the king has fallen ill will arrive, but until then, they will continue their preparations. They consider using the magic armor that is currently broken, but they need time to miniaturize it, so they shelve that idea for now. Instead, Orsted promises to give Ruddy a robe since he cannot wear battle aura. They discuss fighting God's armor, which was built by Demon Dragon King Laplace. While it gives you great power, it also controls your mind, similar to the Super Tribe Spears. Orsted also gives Ruddy a magic circle that can summon a guardian magical beast to protect his family. Ruddy plans on summoning the beast tomorrow. Ruddy worries that one of his descendants will become Laplace, but Orsted reassures him that this will not be the case. Ruddy asks Orsted to forgive Nanhoshi for luring him during their fight, and he places the blame on himself. So Orsted agrees to forgive her. Orsted also gives him a ring that works like a compass, allowing Ruddy to contact Orsted in emergencies. Ruddy then leaves the hut and carries Zenova back to Ginger's room. Later, Ruddy reflected on the fact that Orsted implied that there would always be a next time if they failed. He considers the possibility that Orsted may have time travel abilities similar to his future self. Ruddy pushes these thoughts out of his mind and vows to try his best without relying on duvers. Ruddy works on improving his combat power by sparring with Eris. He asks Cliff and Zenova to repair and improve the magic armor by making it smaller and more efficient. Ruddy then gathers his family to their garden as he plans to summon the guardian magical beast. Various family members distrust Orsted and are skeptical that Orsted's summoning magic circle is safe, but Ruddy reaffirms his trust in Orsted. Ruddy activates the magic circle and ends up summoning Arumanfi, who is a servant of Peruginus. Arumanfi is very annoyed at being separated from his connection with Peruginus, and demands that Ruddy cancel their new contract, so they quickly cancel Arumanfi's new contract with Ruddy, with help from Peruginus. After this, Ruddy tries the summoning again, and this time he pictures summoning a lion, but he ends up summoning a large dog. Eris soon points out that the dog looks similar to the holy beasts that they met in Darudia village. Ruddy worries about angering the Darudia tribe for taking away the holy beast, but he finally decides to make a contract with the holy beast. They then name him Leo. Later, Luke comes to Ruddy's house and directly asks for his support in Ariel's bid for the throne of the Asura kingdom. Ariel has given up on persuading Peruginus to support her. Ruddy suspects that Luke has been influenced by Hidegami, just like in his future self's timeline. But Luke denies knowing Hidegami. He says he is making this request on his own accord. Ruddy tells Luke that he will consider his request to support Ariel and get back to him. Later, Ruddy thinks to himself that he isn't sure if supporting Ariel would be acting in accordance with Hidegami's plans, so he wants to consult with Orsted first. Soon Ruddy meets with Orsted. They update each other on what has happened in the last 10 days. Ruddy tells Orsted that the holy beast Leo was summoned as his guardian magical beast. Orsted is surprised that such a powerful beast was summoned. They feel that the safety of Ruddy's family is now nearly guaranteed. Ruddy informs Orsted that he has asked Cliff to help solve Orsted's curse by developing a magic tool. On the other hand, Orsted has asked Peruginus to help Ariel become queen, but Peruginus refused, as he isn't certain that Ariel is worthy of becoming queen. Ruddy informs Orsted about Luke's visit with him, about the fact that Luke may be Hidegami's apostle, and that Luke asked for Ruddy's support for Ariel. After hearing everything, Orsted insists they should still help Ariel. However, Orsted suggests killing Luke as he is quite certain that Luke is Hidegami's apostle. However, Ruddy is reluctant to kill someone, and especially an acquaintance like Luke. Ruddy responds that he is concerned that if they kill Luke, they will take away a major source of emotional support for Ariel, and that he may be vital for her to become queen. And furthermore, Hidegami may have taken into account that Orsted would try to kill Luke. Orsted agrees to hold off on the idea of killing Luke. Ruddy asked Orsted how many people Hidegami can manipulate. Orsted replies that Hidegami can use the future sight on up to 3 people. Although he could manipulate more people without using future sight, he typically limits himself to manipulating 3 people. Next, Orsted gives Ruddy a robe as previously promised to improve his defense in combat. It has considerable magic resistance, and is highly blade resistant. It also reduces the weight of the wearer by half, and allows one to move very quickly. Back at home, Ruddy has a discussion with Sylphie. He confirms that he will be supporting Ariel in becoming the queen as per Orsted's orders. Sylphie remains distrustful of Orsted, and asks what Orsted has to gain by doing this. Ruddy replies that Orsted wants political connections. Orsted's plan is to ask Peruginus to support Ariel, as Perugius already has political influence. They discuss the fact that Ruddy will be going to a Sarog kingdom to support Ariel. Sylphie states that she wants to come as well to support her friend, but Ruddy warns Sylphie to be aware that Hitagami can manipulate anyone, and he also reveals that Luke is likely being manipulated. After hearing this, Sylphie declares that if Luke ever were to betray Ariel, she would kill Luke. Ruddy thinks to himself that if they were forced to kill Luke, he would take it upon himself to do it. Ruddy, along with Sylphie, goes to Sky Castle and sees Ariel having tea with Nanahoshi. Ariel looks tired and depressed, and they join Sylphie for tea. Nanahoshi tells Ruddy that Orsted has forgiven her for her betrayal. Ariel notes that while she was afraid of Orsted, she didn't hate him. After hearing this, Ruddy wonders if Orsted's curse is less effective on her, and if Hitagami may be manipulating her. Ariel muses that she had planned to ask for Ruddy's support in the past, but decided against it because she felt Rudeus was too powerful, and she wasn't worthy to control that power. Ruddy counters that while he has great magic power, he considers himself an average person, with all the worries of an average person. He tells Ariel that he intends to support her, and Ariel is very grateful for it. She inquires if supporting her was Orsted's idea, but Ruddy lies so that he can feed Hitagami false information by Luke. He tells her that it was actually his idea to support her, but he also has Orsted's blessing. Ariel's group discusses that their first goal is to gain Perugius on their side, because he has a wide influence. Ruddy brings up the question that Perugius asked, which says, "What is the most important factor to a king?" Perugius promised that if Ariel came up with the correct answer, he would offer her his support. Ruddy thinks to himself that Ariel's former guardian magician, Derek Redhat, would have been the one to tell her the correct answer to the question. So he asks Ariel about Derek. Ariel suddenly remembers that Derek's death was what inspired her to become king. She recounts how Derek sacrificed himself to save her life, and prior to that, she had no interest in being king. She recounts Derek's final words, which implored her to become the king, inspired by the sincerity of his dying words. She decided to strive for the throne. Despite Ariel remembering her reason for wanting to be king, she is still unable to answer the question of what is a king's most important factor. So, Orsted proposes to go to the Book Labyrinth, a place where a copy of every book of the world is made by a demon king. So, this place is located in the demon continent, and they need to teleport. Orsted gives Ruddy a sketch of a specific book if he doesn't find the necessary information. The next day in the base of operation of Orsted, they find a magic circle in the basement. Those who are going are Ruddy, Sylphie, Luke, Ariel, Aris, and Ghislaine. So, they use the magic circle, and then they appear in a room similar to the others' teleport rooms. Aris excitedly wants to explore, but she is stopped by Ruddy. When they enter, they find hallways of books, arranged from oldest to newest, and in the center of the labyrinth, they find the demon King Batobai, a huge slime with an eyeball that uses his tentacles to write the books. They avoid him and decide to search for a book about the first king of Asura. Soon they find a book, and in it, they read that he was the third prince during the Laplace War. After his older brother and parent were killed, he became the next king of Asura. They also find that he have many achievements, but in the same time he wasn't perfect, and commonly he went to taverns, got drunk, and fought. Ruddy also finds magical books, and one of them is called the Powerless God. It has a way that can change the rules of the world, and can nullify the power of gods and abilities. Ruddy thinks about how to remove curses, and how it may help Zenith and Orsted, so he takes notes from it to his diary. But then soon, Ruddy realizes that one of the tentacles of the Demon King started a copy of his diary. So Ruddy writes in his diary that he wants to have a conversation with the Demon King. And so the Demon King appears, because the future diary of Ruddy was an interesting experience of an alternative future. The Demon King grants to Ruddy a wish. Ruddy shows him the sketch that Orsted drew, and the Demon Kings give him a book. And that book is The Diary of Derek Redbat. So after reading his diary, Ariel finds the answer of beating a king, and passes the diary to Luke. Later when they were leaving, the Demon King became angry, because a tear of Luke damaged the diary, and he starts to attack. So the group starts to run away, and they quickly leave the labyrinth. Soon, Ariel arranges an audience with Perugius to once again ask for his support. Perugius has questioned once again, what is the most important factor of a king? Ariel's answer is, to inherit wills, that is to be influenced by others. Perugius laughs at this answer and calls her a fool. Ariel stands her ground and admits she may be a fool. She declares that she intends to state her true feelings. She further states that if their ideals aren't compatible, then despite the fact that she wants his assistance, they may not be able to work well together. Rudeus is impressed with Ariel's conviction.